Overheard a gross comment. This happened around 5 years ago, but still bothers me. I was at work in an open-plan office area. Most people were not at their desks, so it was almost empty. 2 male colleagues were chatting to each other, and either they forgot I was there or they assumed I had headphones on and couldn't hear them. One guy was divorced and had a daughter who was a toddler. He said to his friend, "The thing about having a girl is that I just can't wait until she's a teenager and brings her hot girl friends home for sleepovers." The other guy laughed and the conversation continued. I was horrified at the implication that this man, who was a father of a daughter, wanted the opportunity to perv on and maybe even sexually assault teenage girls. So gross. I hope most guys don't think and say things like that. One of my favorite memories of my mom. We were hanging out at a barbecue with friends' family and my cousin asked if he and his girlfriend could use the hot tub. My uncle Steve said something like, "Oh yeah. I know we'd all like to see girlfriend in her swimsuit." My mom reached under the table, yanked out a fistful of his leg hair. He howled like a cat and left. She's my hero, lol. JFC. Reason number 43571: I was overprotective of my daughter. My ex-husband's best friend used to make comments like "old enough to bleed, old enough to breed," and when she started scout stuff about not tying coming in handy. To hear that shit from someone who knows you. I trusted no one during her childhood. When I was a college freshman, my roommate had car trouble, and my dad happened to be in the area. So, I offered to ask him to help. We never spoke about it, but the way he behaved around her, we both picked up on it. I was so embarrassed and disappointed he would be like that. But it wasn't completely surprising he would choose to perv. I made a post here recently about the gross conversation I overheard too. And I had tons of comments saying no one would say that you're a liar, and it made me so mad. Do these people not realize what a common mindset this is? So many men find this normal, it's discouraging. Pretty sure they do. Had the same experience. Dad was taking me on one of his narcissistic daddy-daughter days where he just paraded me to whatever audience. We met up with one of his equally gross friends. They always seemed to find each other. The dude had a daughter similar age as me. Late teens. Said he didn't like it when his daughter had sleepovers because it was tough for him. You poor thing. Difficult for you not to molest teenagers. Fuck her need for socialization and friendship, right? It pains a man's pee-pee. You can hope as hard as you want. But I've unwillingly overheard comments like that from men in the various tech companies I've worked in. They were husbands and fathers, too. It's sad and discouraging. I know. Normalize calling him out in the moment. I seriously cannot help it. I would have busted out with, "Oh wow. You're fucking disgusting. I can touch my nose with my tongue." The number of times my stepdad said, "You're gonna make a guy real happy with that tongue someday." I was too young to even get the joke and was absolutely horrified when it clicked. Reminds me how my own uncle would make gross comments about my body next to my father. And he would just laugh along. Perverted old men are so gross. If they do the same about my daughter, I'll eviscerate them with a smile. Hence why girls can't go to sleepovers anymore. It's so gross. My dad made some comments about my friends not being developed yet. Well, that certainly shaped my attitude about men. How absolutely gross those co-workers are. The one guy sounds almost dangerous. That is utterly toxic. I find it so interesting that I grew up around men who said these sorts of things all the time. So much so that I thought it was just normal. Now as an adult, I rarely hear men say these things. I think it's because as a child, I was around an extremely different type of man than I am now. The kicker: as a child, I was around Christian men. As an adult, I am often around queer folks or queer-adjacent folks. With the discourse today, it just feels aggravating. I was raised in the prequel to modern purity culture. Men were taught that sexual attraction was the only feeling they had. That or anger. I've said some cringy things in my time. What I learned was that I could have deep, connected friendships with people regardless of their gender or sexuality. It took a long time. Unlearning my programming was the best thing for making my life better and making me a better person. EWW. This reminds me of the time when my second cousin's pervy husband told me you'd look really good in a yellow polka dot bikini. I was 0.13 or maybe 14. My cousin gave him a dirty look and then told me he is trying to give you a compliment. Gross. Some men are just creepy. Some appears to be a percentage up to and including 99.9. There is much truth in jest. As they say, he was joking. Of course he wasn't actually admitting that he'll creep on teenage girls. He very well might creep on teenage girls. Of course he just wasn't admitting it. But even if he doesn't creep on teenage girls, he wants to. And that in itself is fucking horrifying. The worst part of that story is, well, the disgusting comment. The next worst part is that the guy he was talking to didn't even pretend to play it off. Even gross guys tend to be afraid of my friend's dad, who said that ended up going to prison for the reason you'd expect. I hope most guys don't think and say things like that. They do. When I was a teenager, I was hanging out at my friend's house without them for a few hours one night. Their mom was out of town. And the cool dad invited me into the hot tub, gave me a drink, and made fun of how his wife's swimsuit was too big for me. I got embarrassed, so went in to change, and after I found him in the living room with a porn on, and he asked me to sit on his lap. I waited the rest of the time shivering in the garage. It was winter, and never told his children. Because I was in shock or something. So yeah. Dads are men and can be predators. Definitely gross. Unfortunately, most men I've met say things like this when their guard is down. Makes me want to nope out of society. Well, I heard this exact phrase years ago, so yeah. It is normal pouting. Not to get political, but I am now no longer shocked at how many men I know who actually have daughters and then support anti-women causes. Politicians, idiot podcasters, a certain president, and the current Supreme Court of the USA. It boggles my mind. But I think that they all think bad things won't happen to their girls. So it's okay. Most won't say that, but many of them think it. More of the many parents shouldn't be. I'm all for more restrictive laws about evaluating people before they have kids. My cousin is kind of great. When his son was a freshman in high school, they put in a swimming pool. At Thanksgiving, my uncle made a gross joke about how the investment pays for itself the first time he brings girls over to swim. And my cousin gives him this withering look. Doesn't say anything. Turns away to start talking with someone else. He gets a pass when the revolution comes. Why are such gross people able to say such disgusting things without an ounce of shame publicly to boot?